Hey guys, it's Bjorn here again, Goosebumps #1 Aussie fan, bringing you another video. This one's probably going to go for at least 15-20 minutes. This is going to be just the history of my collecting since the moment I was born up until now. So yeah guys, I just want to tell you the story of how it all began and all the different encounters I had of collecting certain Goosebumps items along the way. I mean, I did say the story about the ring binder, which was in my top 3 favorite Goosebumps items collection, but I've sort of just given you bits and pieces of my story. I haven't really told you everything, like where I got my biggest hauls of Goosebumps stuff, because if you've seen my collection videos, I'll just refer to different items, and if you want to see what they are, just look back on my collection videos and you'll see them, of course, throughout. So yeah, let's get started. Now, of course, I mentioned in my collection video that Goosebumps for me started not in Australia, it actually started in New Zealand. See, we used to live in New Zealand before we lived in Australia. I was born there, my sister was born there, my brother was born there, we were all born over there basically. But my mum wanted to move to Australia, so we ended up moving to Australia when I was about 3. And so yeah, I was very young, and still a bit young for Goosebumps. I was born in 1995, so when I was 3, that was about 1998. So I wasn't, you know, Goosebumps was still around at that time, but I, of course, wasn't old enough to be reading the books and, you know, collecting, knowing what it is. I mean, it was all around me at that time, because in 1995, 1996, 1997, 98, that's when the TV show started, all the merchandise came out. You know, there was, J&H Toys was a company in Australia that produced all this Goosebumps stationery stuff. Like, it was just around me everywhere at the time, but I was so young to really realise and know what it was. But we went to New Zealand in the year, I think it was 2000, I was about 5. We just went over to visit some relatives, because my mum's mum lives over there and my dad's mum lives over there, and so all our cousins and auntie and my uncle, everyone lives in New Zealand basically. I didn't have much family that lived in Australia. My mum's brother lives in Australia, but most of our family lived actually over in New Zealand. And so we went to my cousin's house one day, my dad's sister's house, and yeah, so my cousin Nick, which is her son, he had all the Goosebumps books, he had all the toys, he had so much Goosebumps stuff. And when he comes to my room now, he just can't believe that I'm still obsessed with it, even to this day from the age of 5. But I still love it as much as I did back then. Goosebumps is going to be with me forever. So yeah, basically when we went over to my cousin's house, he invited me into his room, you know, cool hangout between, you know, cousins. I mean, he's a lot older than me, of course. He was like, he was probably about 10 in 95. Like, no, he was about 7 or 8 in 1995. Basically, he was the right age when Goosebumps came out, so he had all the books, he had collected them, he was obsessed at the time. He had the videos and whatnot, everything. And I went into his room, and he was playing some Simpsons game on his computer, and I just sort of looked around his room and I noticed these stacks of books on his bookshelf. And I started flicking through them, and I was just mesmerized. I loved these book covers and, of course, Goosebumps, and I just, my eyes lit up, you know. And he even looked at me, and I remember he said, "So, you think you're old enough to read those books?" And I just sort of, you know, you know, because of course they're scary and whatnot, you know, and for a 5-year-old, they're not really the right age group at that time, but when I'm a bit older, of course, I'll read them. But then, of course, you know, being really young and silly, I ran up to my parents asking me, "Please, can you buy me Goosebumps books? Can you buy me Goosebumps books?" You know, my young self. So there was actually a Scholastic bookshop, like 20 minutes from their house. It's in Auckland. And yeah, we went there, and basically my parents had bought me all the books. Like, I pretty much remember getting the whole set, 1 to 62, flat out, just all of them. And Mum wouldn't actually let me read them, of course. She would always, like, keep them sort of on the top shelf in my room where I couldn't reach them. But I always found my ways. But I didn't read them anyway. I just looked at the covers and I loved them, you know what I mean? I was just mesmerized. You know, I wasn't really at that age group to read Goosebumps yet, you know. But of course, when I got a bit older, so when I was probably about 7 or 8, I actually started reading the books, and I absolutely loved them. And of course, as I've said before, Night of the Living Dummy to me was just the most amazing book cover for Goosebumps, the first one. It was just, I don't know what it was, I absolutely loved that book cover. Like, I remember just sitting there and looking at it for such a long time. Like, even when I was reading the book, I would constantly flick back to the front page while reading it and just look at it, and then go back to reading, and then 2 chapters later I'd look at it again. I loved the cover so much. And of course I loved, Night of the Living Dummy 2, Night of the Living Dummy 3, but I remember when I first got my first ever Series 2000 Goosebump book, I was like, whoa, what are these? Like, I thought it was just, the original 62 books, but there was a whole variety of other series spin-offs. There was the Series 2000, there was the Give Yourself books. When I was really young, I thought that the Give Yourself books, how there's the black ones and then the shiny ones, right? I thought they were 2 separate series when I was really young, but then obviously when I got a bit older I realised, no, it's the same series, they just changed the cover a bit, they made them black and just a bit different, But they're actually the same series, they just, they follow. Of course they don't follow in story, but it's still the Give Yourself books, they follow in the numbers 1 to 42, I think it is. But then there was those special edition ones, of course, as well in those. But yeah, when we got back to Australia, I had all the books and whatnot, and Mum kept them on the top shelf, and of course I wasn't really allowed to, because I wasn't allowed to read them. She would take them down for me and let me look at them every so often. She didn't want me reading them because some of the Goosebump books actually got banned from libraries, and my mum found out about it, and she didn't really want me reading them because she thought I was too young to read them, thinking they'd be too frightening. Didn't want to damage me when I was 5. But she'd let me just look at them, thinking when I'm older I can read them. That was the whole point of it. And so my dad works in a fish and chip shop, which was only maybe a 15-minute walk from where we lived. Not in the house now, in a different house. We lived somewhere else, in an area called Palm Beach. And he always used to go to op shops on the way home from work. He would always leave, because we used to close a bit early, like at 3-4 o'clock, and the op shops were still open on the way home. So Dad the first time he came home, about a week after we, came back from New Zealand, he had brought home some Goosebumps stuff. And I'll show you exactly what he brought home. These were the first ever 2 Goosebumps items I got. We got a Night in Terror Tower VHS and Goosebumps Ghost Beach ring binder, which is by J&H Toys, the Australian company that did all the stationery merch. These were the first 2 ever Goosebumps items I got in my collection. So yeah, I got those, and then I was aware that, okay, Goosebumps stuff, in op shops and pawnbrokers, and I said to my dad, oh, can we go drive around and look for some more Goosebumps stuff, and this was me, like, when I'm 7, 8. And so yeah, we drove around, we went to op shops, we went to pawnbrokers, we went to, hang on, what am I saying? No, I was 5, sorry. I was 7 or 8. No, I was still 5 at the time when we got back from New Zealand. No, we went off to different op shops and pawnbrokers and markets in the mornings, he collected records, but I was collecting Goosebumps, so I would always find Goosebumps stuff. Like, I would find toys and books and board games and videos and audio tapes and puzzles and tape dispensers. I was finding so much Goosebumps stuff everywhere. But then, as the years went on, it started to get harder and harder and harder to find Goosebumps stuff. And especially now with the movie out, it is like impossible to find Goosebumps books these days. I'm talking the old book covers. The new ones you can find anywhere now. Funny enough, today I went to the shops and they actually have like a Goosebump cutout with books and a whole section of books now in the book section. Like, so many now. But yeah, getting off topic there. It was just getting harder and harder to find them. See, my mum had gone to Kmart and a couple other places, and she had bought out pretty much what they had left in the shops, because there was still a few items floating around, but it wasn't so much toys and whatnot. It was more like quilt cover sets for bedding, Goosebumps socks, like you guys would have seen in my video, the Night of the Living Dummy socks. Yeah, there was those. There was still videos, of course, Goosebumps videos around. But yeah, my mum had pretty much bought out what was left, for my collection. And there was that Goosebumps Christmas book and stocking as well. So yeah, there was a lot of different little miscellaneous sort of items still around, and she pretty much bought it all out for me. And yeah, so I had a pretty good Goosebumps collection by the time I was like 8 or 9. You know, I had a pretty good size collection. There was one shelf, and of course now it's a whole bedroom. But I had about one full shelf by the time, you know, I had, you know, when I was 8 or 9, I had a good size collection. And so I hadn't really found much Goosebumps stuff around that time. Like after that though, it was just decreasing more and more. Every year it was getting harder and harder to find stuff, and I thought I'm never going to find stuff again. I was just finding the same old board games, and that's why I have so many duplicates. Like I just found the same old books and board games and videos, like, and I wasn't finding anything new. But then in 2007 we moved here into our house now, and there was a market at Eleanor just down the road, and we went to that market. The first week we got here, we moved here, my dad found out about the market, we went there, and there was a lady there, and she had Goosebumps tape dispensers. She had Goosebumps audio, audio tapes that I didn't have. She had exercise books, like she had all these different Goosebumps things, glow-in-the-dark stickers, and I was just like, oh my god, like, and I was 12 at the time. I was like, oh my god, and it was like such a haul, all this Goosebumps stuff, and my dad and I, we just sort of like, we'll take the lot, we'll take everything. So we bought all the Goosebumps stuff, and she pretty much just said, oh, so you're a Goosebumps fan, you're a Goosebumps collector. I'm like, yeah, definitely. She said, come back next week and I'll bring back more stuff. We came back the following week on the Sunday morning, and she had like 2-3 boxes full of Goosebumps stuff. All stationery mainly, but then there was those ink sprayer things, there was like flip face things, like there was so much Goosebumps stuff she had brought to me. Goosebumps t-shirts, that's where I got my Give Yourself t-shirts. A lot of you, I had a few comments about where I got my Give Yourself Goosebumps t-shirts, and it was actually from this lady. I basically got this huge haul of Goosebumps stuff, and that accounted for at least a quarter to nearly half my collection now that I've got. I got so much at the one time, and it really increased my collection size to like 2 big shelves. And yeah, I had to move actually from an old bedroom into the room I'm in now because I had so much stuff. It was just too small, I couldn't fit it all. And yeah, in this room I can fit shelving all around, plus the bed in the middle and this cutout behind me. But I kind of stopped collecting Goosebumps for a little while. Like I kind of, you know, I didn't give up on it. I still kept it all out. It was still my number one thing. But when I was starting, you know, getting into like high school and doing like my exams and, you know, trying to, you know, figure out what I want to do for my future and really focus on school, I just sort of wasn't thinking about it so much. But then, not long after I graduated, I instantly started collecting Goosebumps again. And but I hadn't collected it for a little while. Like, we're talking maybe 2-3 years, I hadn't looked in an op shop or looked anywhere for any Goosebumps stuff. But then when I did start collecting it again, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't find any books, no videos, nothing. It was just, there was like nothing around now. It had gone from being the odd thing here and there in op shops and markets and pawnbrokers to being like nothing. And I'm thinking, gee, 3 years I stopped collecting Goosebumps, and then when I want to start again, there's nothing around. There was just nothing around. You're lucky 1 in every 20 op shops I find a couple books now. It's that hard now to find them and to find anything Goosebumps. But since I've graduated over the last 4 years, I have managed to find a lot of stuff though in that time. But it's like consistent. I have to be very consistent when I go looking at op shops, and the same ones over and over again, because they get new stuff in every week. So you don't know what's coming in next week. They could bring in, someone could donate all their Goosebumps collection to this one op shop, and the next week it's all on the shelves. You know what I mean? But most of the op shops around here have my name and number in a book, so if anything comes in, they let me know. And yeah, but lately I haven't found anything. Like, I went to the city a week ago, and I found one Goosebump book. One out of all the bookshops in the city, and there was just one old, I'm talking the original books, one book. I couldn't believe it. We went out of town, little areas, and there was one book. It had all the freaking op shops and bookshops. There was one Goosebump book, and I'm thinking, well, with the movie out, it's just going to be even harder now to find the old stuff, because everyone wants the old stuff now, I think. And yeah, but of course I've told you my story about the ring binder and all that. I'm not going to bother telling you guys that now. I was just going to... Basically, this video was just to tell you about from the age of when it started and where it kind of just progressed. And so yeah, it progressed from me, my cousin telling me about him, getting the books, moving to Australia, my dad bringing stuff home, and then when I got a bit older, we started going off looking around for stuff, finding these hauls of stuff along the way. And but yeah, I stopped collecting Goosebumps for those 3-4 years and then started again. And yeah, now it's huge, as you guys have seen. But yeah, that's pretty much everything to talk about now in this video. That's pretty much my life story about Goosebumps. Other than you guys know that it's my passion. It's that one thing, like if I'm depressed or upset and I'm just having a bad day, all I have to do is walk into this bedroom, look around, and it puts a smile on my face, you know? It's in my opinion, it's the greatest thing. Like, you know what I mean? It's something I can always rely on. Other than my beautiful girlfriend, of course. But yeah, guys, it's my haven, this is my life. What can I say? Anyway, that's my story about Goosebumps. Yeah, see you guys again soon.